All right, the game about flowers deserves a couple flowers. I'm bad at this. Welcome back to Get This Game, where we're all about the board gaming goodness. I'm Jake, and it's January. It's also very cold, it's very gray out, it's very gross, it's very sad. But I think I have a game that's going to kind of breathe some new life into your living room this winter, because it's all about plants and flowers, and it's called Botany. This comes to us from Dux Somnium Games, which I believe this is either their first release or at least one of their earlier releases. And it is all about basically going out on expeditions to collect specimens of plants so that you can bring them back to your estate, cashing them in to basically get some money, reputation, and try to become the royal botanist. Now, this is the latest game that I've played in a series that I like to call kind of next level games. We're all very familiar with welcoming games, those games like Ticket to Ride, Catan, Carcassonne, Pandemic, etc. A lot of the general public have played these games, and they are really meant to be very approachable games that kind of introduce people to the board gaming hobby and to what strategy board games can be. Now, you're going to probably branch off into one of two veins after you've done that. On the one hand, you're going to say, that was fine, but board gaming just isn't for me. Or those welcoming games are going to kind of pique your interest and you're going to want to learn more. That's when I like to bring out a game like Botany that is still very approachable. The rule set is pretty straightforward, but it starts to kind of add in those extra layers and those kind of new elements of strategy and gameplay to really open up people even more to what board gaming can be and just how good it is. Now, when I was playing Botany, I really did get a lot of vibes and kind of connections between this and a game like Ticket to Ride. So today, we're going to talk about 3 reasons why I think you should play Botany after you have played Ticket to Ride, or at least show it to someone who is a fan of that game and maybe wants to try something a little bit more. Before we get to how the game works, just a reminder, I would invite you to subscribe if you like me, if you like Botany, if you like board games in general. We try to talk about bigger reviews, monthly roundups, lists all the time when we can. So please, again, leave a comment about what your favorite welcoming or kind of next level game is. Turn on those notifications. And again, we hope you stay for the party. So like I said, in Botany, we are botanists in 19th century England. And on our turns, we are going to be venturing out to different parts of the world to collect those specimens. Now, everyone is going to have a hand of cards with these beautifully illustrated plants and flowers on them. They're going to have a certain point value as well as a location where they're originally from. And that's why we're going to be actually visiting certain locations over others. We're going to try and map out our moves, because as we reach each location where we have a corresponding flower from its homeland, you're actually going to be able to place it in our case as a live specimen. And then after we've collected a few of these, we get to bring them back to our estate, transfer them over to our garden and live specimen area, cashing them in for money, points at the end of the game, and being able to basically reap the rewards so we can go out for further expeditions. On your turn, you're always going to be paying 1 coin to start, and this kind of acts as the timer for how long you can hang out in the world before you have to return home. Expeditions are costly. They do cost money for all of the gear and crew that you're going to be covering off. So yeah, you have to pay a coin before you can start making your moves to different countries of the world. You're also going to be revealing events. These events might involve doing a bit of a skill check, like a die roll that puts you in a grave, perilous situation. It could be anywhere from kind of meeting a new diplomat all the way to finding a swarm of angry bees next to the flower you're trying to pick up. So there are little challenges that every player is going to have to face before they can actually start making their moves and collecting those plants. From there, you are going to move, again, collecting flowers and playing down specimens of cards as you have them and as you visit those locations. And then you'll have the opportunity to kind of upgrade your expedition card array by getting and recruiting new crew, gear, and items. That is mainly the kind of turn flow and how everything works. The big kind of give and take and kind of tug and pull of what's going on in the game is really managing your economy and your move economy as well. Figuring out the right combination of places you can visit, making sure you have enough money to fund those expeditions so you can be out on more turns at a time, eventually choosing to come back, bring in all of your resources and benefits to reap the rewards, and then circle and rinse and repeat to do it all over again. So the first reason you should introduce this game after playing Ticket to Ride is it has that familiar card play with a twist. Of course, in Ticket to Ride, you are collecting those cards, different specific colored cards, so that you can look out on the board, compare what you have in your hand, and be able to play the matching colored cards to be able to put out train routes on the board. Well, in Botany, you can already see that there are some parallels there. Yeah, you have a set of cards in your hand, and while they aren't colored, they do correspond with specific areas and spots on the board. So it really is that very familiar kind of approach to knowing I have a set of cards. I need to be strategic and decide exactly what cards I'm going to keep and which ones I'm going to get rid of so that I can venture out and choose where I want to go on the board. There are some twists, though, of course. You do have that factor of having to manage that economy of going out and then choosing when to come back. You really have to map out a lot of your turns because you can only ever move 3 spaces each turn, and you're going to find that this is a very much an efficiency puzzle, which we'll talk about more later. You really want to look and prioritize, okay, if I have a cluster of specimen cards in my hand that kind of correspond with a certain region on the board, I'm going to really focus in and dial in on that. And that is my plan for this specific expedition. I think there's going to be a lot of familiarity here. At its base, Botany is a very simple process. You are paying your coin, resolving an event, moving 3 times, and cashing in flowers and plants when you can. That very regular kind of drumbeat I find to be very approachable, and after a few rounds, even newer gamers are going to pick that up pretty quickly. Reason number 2, this is, again, a map-based efficiency puzzle. One of the things I really love about Botany is that kind of artificial pressure and time crunch that comes through everyone kind of venturing out and then coming back to really cash in on those rewards. The big reason you are bringing back all of those specimens to your home base is the fact that every 3 species and specimens that you cash in, they're going to be worth 1 reputation on the board. And not only does that influence how much income you're going to get on each of your turns, that is also the game clock. When somebody gets to 12 reputation, the game is going to wrap up and you're going to do your final scoring. So there are a ton of different spaces on the board, and different routes are very possible as you're moving your pawn across the different locations. You really do have to be thinking about the shortest direction and the shortest way to get from point A to point B, especially in that late game. Because if you're ever venturing out on an expedition and the game ends before you have the chance to bring all of those specimens back and cash them in at your estate, those are lost points. And the majority of points you're going to be getting are from bringing those specimens and putting them in your garden itself. So I love the fact that, especially in that late game, you are doing that crunchy thinking where you're working with that map, really looking at all the available options and routes on how you can get safely to where you need to go and then back home. And that is something that can really creep up on you, especially in the end game. So something that I really love to see in that game, that kind of creating of that tension based on where everyone's going, seeing that reputation ramp up across the board, and really having that opportunity to have a familiar idea of looking at a map and choosing the most efficient options is going to be something that is going to resonate with Ticket to Riders. And reason number 3 is going to be the tension building moments that are injected into this game. And I'm speaking particularly about the event card deck. Not only does the event card going to dictate on your turn basically what negative effects you could get versus what positive effects you could get. The designers of this game did such a good job of injecting a little bit of story and almost a little bit of humor into each card that is revealed. You really do get a little bit of that old time kind of 19th century world building here between that shipwreck that you might come across. The last game that I played, we even accidentally had a yodeler join our troop, and so I had to actually do a bit of a fortitude check, rolling a certain amount so that I could kind of drive him off or at least stand his presence for a long amount of time. This game, again, does such a good job of introducing those little moments of story, despite it being a very overall abstracted game. This is also going to introduce new gamers to that idea of skill checks, very much like you would see in something like D&D. Based on the given challenge, whether it be attacking bees, an unruly pack mule, anything in between, they are going to be associated with different checks, like doing a charm check or doing a fortitude check or an agility check to avoid an obstacle. And there's plenty of kind of ways to mitigate those rules so that you're really setting yourself up for that success. There's going to be those expedition cards you can get that might give you +1 or +2 to a roll. You might have a personal kind of unique character card that gives you a little bit of advantage there as well. This game does introduce that luck element, which most people are going to be familiar with. And honestly, with this level of game, I'm okay with that level of luck in terms of complexity. It doesn't overstay its welcome by any means, so I'm okay with that skill check element being introduced because not only does it result in some kind of aha stand up and cheer moments with big swings, it then again also does kind of introduce that idea of how you can mitigate that luck using purchased cards to kind of overcome that obstacle. So let's get into some grades and scores for Botany. As always, I rank games based on gameplay and design, presentation, and fun factor, just my overall experience with the game. We always rank gameplay and design a little bit higher and presentation a little bit lower because it's way more important to have a good game than a pretty looking game. With gameplay and design, this is going to get a 7.6 out of 10 for me. Hard to really get anything above with a kind of game of this weight. Certainly all of the mechanics that are being introduced here, set collection, moving across a board, a little bit of cashing in an economy. This is nothing new here necessarily, but it doesn't need to be. This is very much a welcoming plus sort of board game, and so you don't necessarily have to introduce all these extra mechanics to the fray. Where this shines in the gameplay and design for me is that theme integration and that connection. Like I said, the events that you're going to be getting and revealing across the board, the different expedition cards, the pets, and the crew members that you can get all have a kind of integration and effect that really makes sense in the game world, which I love. Yeah, you're going to have a little bit of that luck factor here. And, you know, maybe some gamers are going to be turned away at that. Personally, for me, there are a ton of opportunities for that luck mitigation. And frankly, for a game of this weight, a little bit of random luck or random unluckiness just kind of adds to the fun around the table for me. For presentation, this gets a 9.2 out of 10. This game absolutely looks gorgeous. From the old-time stylized map that you're going to be working with, despite it looking really gray and beige and bland, it somehow still pops and looks beautiful. All of the cards and all of the specimens you're going to be picking up, even right down to the characters you're going to be playing as, all of those are kind of public domain photographs and illustrations that were collected for this game, which I thought was a really nice touch. All of the actual plants and people and kind of animals and art in this game actually are from the 19th century that have been collected and compiled. So a really well done job there. The box insert here, I should also mention, is very well done. There's just an overarching kind of plastic cover that keeps everything in place, as well as a nice little box for all of the money that you can just take out, put on the table, and you're ready to play. And in terms of the fun factor for me, this gets an 8.7 out of 10. I will call out, I have played this at 2, I have played this at 4 players. The 4-player game, especially if you're playing with new people, can run a little bit long. I think we got through maybe 2 to 2.5 hours with the full 4-player count. Maybe it overstays its welcome at 4. I would probably say this is best at 3. But with that said, the time flew by. At no point was I thinking like, oh man, this is really dragging out. I was engaged the whole time. And that just speaks to my overall enjoyment of the game. I do think there's some replayability here. Now, at the full 4-player count, you're going to run through all of the different events that you can experience just about through the whole course of the game. But there are also a ton of different kind of play styles and ways you can go about things. You can go with different kind of player characters, each with their own tiny little bonuses. Some are going to give you maybe +1 hand size to the cards in your hand. Another might even let you draw 2 cards and then choose one to keep as opposed to just taking off the top of the deck. And all of them have different kind of benefits to certain skill checks that you're going to get. So I think there's a little bit of replayability here. There aren't complete asymmetric differences here or different scenarios that you're going to be working out in the box. But again, with a game of this weight and of this design, I don't think it needs to be. There is just enough variability here that you are going to be happy every time you set this out. And frankly, I should mention, again, those dice rolls, those events, those skill checks do allow for some of those hilarious moments. It is just frankly kind of funny when somebody is rolling 6 after 6 after 6. And it's just as funny when that same person gets a bunch of 1s and 2s and fails a bunch of skill checks in a row, right? And then I will also say a good amount of player interaction here. There are going to actually be certain moments where you can maybe steal a coin from the person beside you. There are actually poisonous plants that will be negative points if they end up in your estate and garden, but you can also pass them along to somebody else. Just a little bit of that right level of playful interaction and a bit of meanness that, in the grand scheme of things, isn't going to make or break somebody's entire game. So the final score on the Get This Game scale for Botany is going to be an 8.2 out of 10. I do think this belongs on the shelf of people who enjoy Ticket to Ride, games like Pandemic, where you love the idea of card play, working with a map, and trying to kind of pick out the routes that you want to take on here. It has that little bit of randomness that I think is just going to be the reality of some kind of more mainstream or approachable games, at least. And then the presentation is just an absolute banger here. Very strong, very good production, and a lot of time and effort went to putting into it. So again, an 8.2 out of 10 for Botany. This is going to be a full-on recommendation that I think you should check this one out for about, I think, $60 US. You're going to get one that you can safely bring out with a lot of different people, which is important. And again, the component quality is going to kind of make it worth that price. Again, please do consider subscribing if you liked the review and you want to see more. Let me know if you want to see more kind of standalone reviews or if you want me to have kind of more list style videos. Happy to do either or. Please consider also following me on TikTok and Instagram. I think a lot of you already do because frankly, my following is bigger there. And as always, thanks for playing.